The rule Letizia broke but Leonor can't. The palace corridors are quiet at that hour. Light settles softly against stone that has witnessed abdications, oaths, reconciliations with history. Portraits line the walls, monarchs who ruled, who stumbled, who endured. And beneath them, a different kind of legacy walks carefully, aware that every footstep echoes longer than it once did. She entered this institution not by birth, but by choice. When Letizia Ortiz Roque Solano married the Prince of Asturias in 2004, she did something no Spanish queen consort had done before. She crossed a threshold that had once been guarded by ancestry, by aristocratic lineage, by a quiet expectation of dynastic familiarity. She was a journalist, a professional, a woman formed by merit, not bloodline. And the institution adapted. That adaptation was not cosmetic. It was structural. Spain in the early 21st century was not the Spain of Restoration. It was a constitutional democracy, integrated into the European Union, aligned with the United States, economically intertwined with Germany, diplomatically engaged with the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Its monarchy could not afford to appear insulated from modernity. So a rule, unspoken but understood, bent. But bending a rule to survive is not the same as abolishing it. This is the living thread of continuity. Because when Princess Leonor de Borbón y Ortiz was born, the axis shifted. She was not entering the institution as an outsider reshaping perception. She was the institution's future sovereign. The first woman in Spain's modern democratic era positioned to inherit the crown outright under reformed succession laws. And for her, the space to bend is narrower. It is easy to believe that progress moves in a straight line, that what one generation challenges, the next expands. But in hereditary systems, advancement is often followed by consolidation. What was once flexible becomes fixed again, not out of regression, but preservation. That is the paradox. Letizia could modernize tone, presentation, accessibility. She could redefine the public image of a queen consort. But Leonor cannot redefine the crown itself without risking its equilibrium. The question is not whether she wishes to. The question is whether she is permitted to. By the second minute of understanding this dynamic, a realization emerges. The rule Letizia broke was not about romance or background. It was about permeability, about the monarchy's ability to open its doors to contemporary Spain. Leonor, however, must represent permanence. And permanence resists experimentation. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. Consider the constitutional framework. Spain's monarchy does not govern. It arbitrates symbolically. It guarantees procedural continuity. It signs legislation passed by elected officials. It represents the state abroad. Its authority is legitimacy, not executive power. That legitimacy depends on predictability. When Letizia entered the royal household, unpredictability signaled relevance. It told a younger Spain that the monarchy understood meritocracy. That it was not frozen in a 19th century mold. When Leonor ascends, unpredictability would signal instability. There is the inversion. One rule, two futures. For Letizia, the rule was social lineage. For Leonor, the rule is institutional restraint. Around the 5-minute mark of this reflection, the deeper stakes become clear. The adaptation that saved credibility in one era can endanger it in another. A consort can personalize. A sovereign must neutralize. This is not about affection within a family. It is about architecture. National identity is woven into these rituals. The oath at 18, the military formation, the constitutional pledge before the Cortes Generales. Each gesture is choreographed not for spectacle, but for reassurance. To Spain, to Europe, to allies across the Atlantic. Observers in the United States study such ceremonies not as pageantry, but as signals of democratic stability within allied systems. In the United Kingdom, where monarchy operates under its own unwritten constitution, analysts recognize the discipline required to balance tradition and reform. Canada and Australia, constitutional monarchies themselves, understand that the crown survives only when it embodies continuity rather than personality. Germany, a federal republic with its own historical lessons about institutional fragility, watches for steadiness. The message must be consistent. At 8 minutes into this understanding, a quieter question lingers. What precisely was the rule? Was it lineage alone, or was it the assumption that proximity to the throne required a certain insulation from ordinary life? Letizia disrupted insulation. She spoke with the cadence of someone trained to question. She brought professional rigor into a palace that once functioned through inherited protocol. She adjusted tone, sometimes criticized, often scrutinized, but undeniably modern. Yet Leonor's preparation moves in the opposite direction. Military academies, constitutional study, diplomatic exposure calibrated carefully, visibility without spontaneity. Something is deliberately unspoken here. There is an awareness within the institution that Spain's monarchy endured turbulence not long ago. Public trust is not infinite. Reputation, once dented, requires years of disciplined repair. King Felipe VI has anchored his reign in transparency and restraint, emphasizing ethical conduct and constitutional loyalty. The margin for experimentation is thin. Between the 10th and 11th minute of this unfolding narrative, a strain appears. Spain is a plural society. Regional identities are strong. Political debates are vigorous. The monarchy stands above them only if it remains visibly impartial. Any deviation risks reinterpretation. For Letizia, personal authenticity strengthened relatability. For Leonor, too much authenticity could invite polarization. That is the institutional tension approaching. Because succession is not merely biological. It is psychological. The public must accept the inevitability of transition long before it occurs. Acceptance depends on trust. Trust depends on consistency. At 14 minutes, the point of no return reveals itself quietly. Once Leonor swore her constitutional oath upon reaching adulthood, she ceased to be simply a daughter within a royal household. She became the embodiment of Spain's future head of state. There is no rehearsal for that. And once embodied, the crown permits fewer deviations than ever before. In a constitutional monarchy, what one generation can challenge, the next must protect, because continuity is not inherited freely, it is preserved deliberately. This is the living thread of continuity. Letizia's narrative arc was about entry. Leonor's is about inevitability. Entry invites reinvention. Inevitability demands discipline. The difference shapes every decision, education, friendships, public speech, even silence. By 19 minutes, a future concern surfaces gently on the horizon. Europe is navigating economic recalibration, shifting alliances, digital transformation, and generational skepticism toward inherited institutions. Across the United States and Commonwealth realms, debates about constitutional forms ebb and flow. Stability is valued, but not guaranteed. If Spain's monarchy is to remain credible within that environment, it must appear both modern and immovable. That balance is delicate. Too rigid, and it risks irrelevance. Too flexible, and it risks fragility. Leonor's generation has grown up under constant digital observation. Every gesture is archived, every expression analyzed. The room for private evolution shrinks. And yet the crown requires maturity that appears effortless. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. The rule Letizia broke was, ultimately, about access. She demonstrated that the monarchy could welcome a citizen shaped by contemporary Spain. That it was not sealed behind aristocratic glass. The rule Leonor cannot break concerns symbolism. She cannot appear elective. She cannot suggest that the crown is one lifestyle among many. She must project inevitability without arrogance, humility without vulnerability. It is a narrower path. The phrase returns not as contrast, but as caution. Spain's allies will measure her steadiness in subtle ways, in diplomatic composure, in adherence to constitutional neutrality, in disciplined public messaging. The United Kingdom will understand the choreography instinctively. Canada and Australia will observe through the lens of their own constitutional debates. The United States will interpret signals of stability as indicators of reliable partnership. Germany will note institutional resilience. No headline will declare these evaluations. They will simply exist, and beneath them lies the quiet reality that monarchy, in a democracy, survives by convincing citizens that it restrains itself more than it asserts itself. Power is structural, not emotional. Duty outweighs desire. Survival of the institution is the ultimate prize. As the final moments of this reflection settle, the palace corridors seem quieter still. Generations overlap briefly, then recede. Letizia's presence marked adaptation. Leonor's will mark consolidation. The rule that once bent to welcome change now stands firm to protect endurance. And somewhere between modernization and permanence, between entry and inevitability, Spain's future sovereign continues her preparation, aware that the freedom to redefine has already been spent, and what remains is the responsibility to preserve. History does not announce its turning points in advance. It waits, and so does the crown.